Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. We're going to start with sports figures tonight. We're going to start with Harry Howell, who died recently at the age of 86, one of the great players in New York Ranger history. Harry was one of the top defensemen for the Rangers when there was still the original 6 teams. He won the Norris Trophy as the best defenseman in the league in 1967, and he still holds the Ranger record for games played. He was a legend not only in New York for the Rangers, but also in Hamilton, Ontario, the place of his birth. And here's a documentary from Hamilton when Harry became an inaugural member of the Hamilton Hall of Fame.
Harry Howell starred on Broadway for 17 years. Harry was just 19 when the New York Rangers called him up for a game at Maple Leaf Gardens. He scored his first NHL goal on his very first shot.
Puck came around the boards on my backhand, and of course the left winger of the Leafs, he was coming out to check me, so I just flipped it, back into the other end, and I could see Harry Lumley, the goalie, he's looking down between legs to see where the puck is, over his shoulder into the net. And that was a great thrill. First shot, first goal, first game. Yeah, it was a great start.
Harry developed into a perennial all-star and earned the James Norris Trophy as the NHL's best defenseman in 1967.
At noon, a couple days before the presentation, they phoned me and said, "By the way, Harry, you have won the Norris Trophy. We'll see you at the dinner. Oh, by the way, we're having a luncheon tomorrow to celebrate this. You can come if you want to."
Harry played more games in a Rangers uniform than anyone in history, a record that has stood for more than 40 years. His pro career spanned 24 seasons between the NHL and WHA. In 1979, Harry was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Fame is a great honor, and I was a little unfortunate over the guys I went in with, because I thought I'd get in with some really good players. And it was Henry Richard and Bobby Orr. I was really disappointed.
In addition to his Hockey Hall of Fame ring, Harry also has a Stanley Cup ring, which he won as a scout with the Edmonton Oilers in 1990.
Oh, it was great. And been a long time waiting for it because we certainly didn't have any chance in New York under the circumstances we played there.
In 2009, the Rangers paid tribute to Harry and his good friend Andy Bathgate, raising their jersey numbers to the rafters at Madison Square Garden. Harry's biggest fan was on hand for the occasion.
Today, my wife of 54 years, Merwin, she's over here.
The Rangers had invited Harry and other former team captains back to New York this week for another big do. But when he learned there was a scheduling conflict with the Hamilton Sports Hall of Fame induction dinner, Harry informed the Rangers he wouldn't be going to New York.
It's a real thrill for me, and knowing most of the people that are going in, and being associated with the Tiger Cats is great too. It's too bad my brother's not around because he would enjoy it too. I think it's quite an honor, and my family's really excited about it too.
Harry Howell, charter member of the Hamilton Sports Hall of Fame.
Gotta love a guy who passes up a big-time gig in New York for Hamilton, Ontario. I don't think everybody would do that. Well, we're going to move on to another sports figure of sorts, Julia Ruth Stevens, who died recently at the age of 102, the last living link to the Babe. She was Babe Ruth's stepdaughter, the daughter of his second wife, Claire, and he adopted her, and they lived together in their Manhattan apartment with Babe's natural daughter, Dorothy. Babe was a father to her, and she in turn has kept his legacy alive since he died in 1948. Here's Plattsburgh Television on Julia Ruth Stevens at her 100th birthday, where she was doing just that.
This past weekend, the Vermont Mountaineers were home to what some figured was just another game on the homestand, while others were hoping to see them continue their recent home winning streak. But as many fans would soon learn, this was also a night to meet a very special guest. On Sunday night, the Vermont Mountaineers welcomed Julia Ruth Stevens, daughter of the all-time great Babe Ruth, to Montpelier Rec Field.
I love baseball.
After all these decades of growing to love the sport her father played, Julia still enjoys the game he helped make a national pastime.
I went to a lot of games, and every time my father would come up to bat, I'd say, "Hit that apple in the eye, and then you'll see how fast it'll fly." Lots of times it worked.
The greatest home run hitter of his generation, the Babe was known for so many things he did on the ball field. But Julia remembers what he did off the field, and for her.
One time when I was quite ill, Daddy stepped right up and said to test me. He was the same type, so he gave me a complete transfusion of blood, and that brought me back.
Which helped bring us to this very week, the week of Julia's 100th birthday, which fans were more than excited to be part of. Some would say, why would she come here now? But Julia has had ties to Vermont since she was a young girl.
I went to camp in Vermont when I was 11, 12, 13, 14 years old on Crystal Lake. I loved every minute of it.
For one day here in New England, it was a longtime Yankees daughter that was the biggest ticket, not the players, who made sure to get their chance to meet Julia.
Oh, you're welcome.
Something everyone in attendance will certainly remember for possibly the next 100 years. Julia, who you may have noticed, was actually wearing a Red Sox jacket, but she, of course, pointed out that the Babe played for the Yankees, and she was a Yankee fan then. She later moved to New Hampshire, where she did join the rival team, but she pointed out that it was also one of her father's teams as well.
You see those pictures of her with the Babe, or any kids with the Babe, and you realize what a personality he had. He genuinely and absolutely loved children. We're going to move on now to Richard Erdman, who died recently at the age of 93. A great character actor, wonderful character actor for over 70 years. His resume goes back to 1944 in Mr. Skeffington, and he's played with everybody. He was in Marlon Brando's first movie. He's played in movies with Betty Davis, Charlie Chaplin, Jack Benny. He was a good friend of Jimmy Cagney's. And even up until a couple of years ago, he was in the TV series Community. For my money, he's best known for two recognizable roles. He was in the legendary Twilight Zone episode Kind of Stopwatch, where he played McNulty, a doofus who picked up a stopwatch that could stop time.
Good morning, wage slaves. Make way for a free man. Good morning, doll.
Oh, what's the suggestion this time, McNulty? If you don't have one, I've got one for you. Why don't you jump off a bridge?
Honey doll, I have a product that is going to put a dent in your eyeballs. What would you say to a stopwatch that when somebody pushes it, everything stops in midair?
Why don't you run away and get lost, McNulty? Oh, get to the point.
I already have. Last night, I'm in Joe Bellucci's bar. We're sitting around talking about this and that, when this funny gleep gives me this stopwatch. Well, without thinking, I push this button. This one, right here, and everything stops dead. Everything. Think about that now. Bellucci drops a glass. The glass hits the floor, but the glass stops. Everything stops. Bellucci stops. Trains, subways, goldfish, everything stops. Think about that now.
Goldfish, too, huh? That's the most amazing thing I ever heard. Now get out of here, will you?
I came here to see Cooper. It is time to diversify.
Oh, now just a minute. Mr. Cooper's in conference.
You're right. He's in conference with McNulty.
If you've seen the episode, you know it doesn't turn out well for McNulty. His other great role is as Hoffy, the head of the barracks in Stalag 17. He's really good in it, and here he tells a story about Billy Wilder, the director.
Billy Wilder. What was the Billy Wilder experience like on that movie?
By the time we got around to doing that movie, he had just come through with 2 or 3 big hits. Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard. My agent, Ingo Preminger,
Otto's brother.
Otto's brother, took me in to meet Mr. Wilder. And Wilder took one look at me, and he said, no laughs. He said, no laughs. We have no laughs from you. And I said, well, why that? He said, no, not one little laugh. Because you are the glue that holds this together. You get no laughs. Everybody else is funny, but not you. So he was trying to tell me to play it straight and not go. Anyhow, about the 6th, 7th week of the shoot, suddenly in the middle of a take, Wilder said, cut, we do it again. Erdman got a titter. He was a very witty fellow.
Richard Erdman was also a writer and a director. He directed the episode of Dick Van Dyke where Buddy got bar mitzvah. Well, I'm never comfortable doing modern poets because it's sort of like doing nuclear physicists for me. But we must make a mention of W.S. Merwin, who died recently at the age of 91. He was the Poet Laureate of the United States in 2010 and a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner. Here's the irrepressible Garrison Keillor introducing him reading one of his poems, which I'm still not sure I understand. I don't know if this is the narrator speaking about himself or speaking about his friend, but, well, you decide.
W.S. Merwin was born in New York City, the son of a minister. After college, He lived in Europe for a number of years, translated Spanish and French poetry, learned how to support himself as a freelance, writing, speaking, giving readings. He moved to Hawaii, where he lives in a dense forest, including rare species of palm trees that he's planted. Poetry, he says, always begins and ends with listening.
Yesterday, my friend says I was not a good son, you understand. I say, yes, I understand. He says, I did not go to see my parents very often, you know. And I say, yes, I know. Even when I was living in the same city, he says, maybe I would go there once a month or maybe even less. I say, oh, yes. He says, the last time I went to see my father, I say, the last time I saw my father, he says, the last time I saw my father, he was asking me about my life, how I was making out, and he went into the next room to get something to give me. Oh, I say, feeling again the cold of my father's hand the last time. He says, and my father turned in the doorway and saw me look at my wristwatch, and he said, you know, I would like you to stay and talk with me. Oh, yes, I say. But if you are busy, he said, I don't want you to feel that you have to just because I'm here. I say nothing. He says, my father said, maybe you have important work you are doing, or maybe you should be seeing somebody. I don't want to keep you. I look out the window. My friend is older than I am. He says, and I told my father it was so. And I got up and left him then, you know. Though there was nowhere I had to go, and nothing I had to do.
Like I said, I don't get it, but he was the Poet Laureate. Well, we're going to close tonight with Marshall Brodien, who died recently at the age of 84. He was a magician, in fact, one of Chicago's best-known magicians. He was one of the first magician pitchmen on television, pitching his magic cards, which was quite a successful venture and bought out by some corporations still being sold. He supplied magic equipment to magicians like David Copperfield and Siegfried and Roy, and he was one of the mob's favorite magicians. He performed in Cicero, and Jackie the Lackey Cerrone once gave him a $1,000 bottle of brandy. But he's best known as Wizzo the Wizard, a character on Bozo Circus. He was not with the original Bozo Circus, but he came on when the original Bozo cast was still doing it, so I guess that makes him the last surviving member of the original Bozo Circus. We just did the Don Sandberg podcast a couple of months ago. He was a talented guy and a funny guy, and here's Dean Richards of WGN with a little segment on Marshall Brodien.
You know, most magic tricks are easy once you know the secret.
It's one of Marshall Brodien's signature lines.
6 or 60. You can work TV magic card.
I'm Marshall Brodien, here at the Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas with the superstars of magic, Siegfried and Roy.
He fell into his first professional show in 1952 at Riverview Park on Chicago's North Side. Marshall graduated to stage shows at nightclubs around Chicago. Listen to what happened while performing at the Magic Lounge in Cicero. He had just done his disappearing birdcage trick for members of the mob when...
Here, hold the cage. Hey, where'd the cage go? I says, it's magic. The guy next to him says, hey, Gumpy wants to know where the cage went. I said, I told him it's magic. Gumpy pulls out a gun, puts it in the bag, clicks it back, and says, where's that cage? And that cage came out of where it was faster than it went where it went.
But the biggest break of his career came in 1962 on WGN's Bozo Circus. He appeared as himself, and national television host Mike Douglas noticed.
Defying the laws of gravity.
An elaborate costume, a little makeup, a stone from Zanzibar, and voila, Wizzo is born.
I get little signals from the stone. People think I don't understand.
I think you're about half stunned myself.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. I think Sid is still thinking about that Magic Lounge story. But Marshall Brodien portrayed Wizzo as a sorcerer of sorts. So as a final tribute to Marshall Brodien, we're going to play a little bit of Paul Dukas' Sorcerer's Apprentice. You can almost see Mickey Mouse and those brooms carrying those water pails.